Ow! Greetings, YouTube. This is DecKrash, better known as Brandon. I wasn't planning on making a video right now, but I stumbled upon something in my little treks through Facebook that both interested me and appalled me. And it came about when I noticed a posting by Anne Rice. I'm a longtime fan of Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles. I've read just about all of them except for a few. And I follow her on Facebook, listen to her postings. I'm not too agreeable to her politics, but I am a fan of her writing. But she's wrote something very interesting. It was in reference to an article in the Huffington Post. And I'm going to go ahead and read what Anne Rice posted about this article. The article is about the author J.K. Rowling, who most everybody knows is the author of the famous Harry Potter series. Now, Anne Rice says of this article, she quotes the title of the article first. If J.K. Rowling cares about writing, she should stop doing it, says novelist Lynn Shepard in this vicious, cynical, resentful, and thoroughly ugly article. It's appalling. Never have I seen anything this malicious ever directed towards an actor, a painter, a ballet dancer, an opera singer, a film director. No, this is the kind of petty, spiteful, condescending criticism that is for some reason reserved for writers in our world. And that it was written by someone who is a writer herself makes it doubly nasty and shocking. I appreciate Jacqueline Kwahianson bringing this to the page. My very best wishes to J.K. Rowling and all of the authors out there as they face the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune in their creative journeys. In my life as a novelist, I come to believe that we are only in competition with ourselves when we strive to do our best. There is plenty of room for a multitude of successful endeavors in the ever-changing world of books and readers, and there always will be. I'm going to go ahead. I brought up the article in question off the huffingtonpost.co.uk. And I will have a link down in the doobly-doo for those of you who want to read it yourselves. But I'm going to read it aloud. It's a fairly short article. But I must admit, this article turned my stomach. As most of you know, I'm a writer myself. I write science fiction and I write fantasy books, just like J.K. Rowling did with the Harry Potter books, though she also has expanded into other avenues by way of The Cuckoo's Calling, which was written under a pseudonym, which was a detective novel, and The Casual Vacancy, that most people know was written by her because it got like a lot of press, although many people say it's not quite as good as the Harry Potter series was, but, you know, I don't think she's ever going to try to top that. But that one's a particular modern day thriller from what I've read about it. Haven't read it myself, actually want to, just to see what it's like. But that's neither here nor there. Let me go ahead and read this article. Those of you who are writers, you might get a little sick to your stomachs over this. There's no language or anything like that. It's just, I'm sorry, I am really forced to agree with Anne Rice in this. When I told a friend the title of the piece, she looked at me in horror and said, "You can't say that. Everyone will just put it down to sour grapes." And she does, of course, have a point. No struggling but relatively ambitious writer can possibly be anything other than envious. You'd be scarcely human otherwise, but this particular piece isn't about that. I didn't much mind Rowling when she was pottering about. I've never read a word or seen a minute, so I can't comment on whether the books were good, bad, or indifferent. I did think it a shame that adults were reading them rather than just reading them to their children, which is another thing altogether. Mainly because there's so many other books out there that are surely more stimulating for grown-up minds. But then again, any reading is better than no reading, right? But The Casual Vacancy changed all that. It wasn't just the hype that was It wasn't just that the hype was drearily excessive or that by all accounts the novel was no masterpiece and yet sold by the hundredweight. It was the way it crowded out everything else, however good, however worthwhile. That book sucked the oxygen from the entire publishing and reading atmosphere, and I chose that analogy quite deliberately, because I think that sort of monopoly can make it next to impossible for anything else to survive, let alone thrive. Publishing a book is hard enough at the best of times, especially in an industry far too fixed with big names and sure things, but what can an ordinary author do up against such a Golgamath? And then there was the whole Cuckoo's Calling saga. I know she used a pseudonym, no doubt strenuous efforts excuse me, and no doubt strenuous efforts were indeed made to conceal her identity, but there is no spell strong enough to keep that concealed for long. Her boy hero may be able to resort to an invisibility cloak, but in the real world, they just don't exist. With a secret as sensational as that, it was only a matter of time until the inevitable happened. And then, of course, this apparently well-written and well-received crime novel, which seems to have sold no more than 1,500 copies under its own steam, suddenly went stratospheric. And as with the casual vacancy, so with this, the book dominated crime lists and crime newspapers and crime reviews in newspapers and crime sections of bookshops, making it even more difficult than it already was for other books just as well written and just as well received to get a look in. Rowling has no need of either the shelf space or the column inches, but other writers desperately do, and now there's going to be a sequel, and you can bet the same thing is going to happen all over again. So this is my plea to J.K. Rowling. Remember what it was like when The Cuckoo's Calling had sold only a few boxes, and think about those of us who are stuck there because we can't wave a wand and turn our books into overnight bestsellers merely by saying the magic word. By all means, keep writing for kids or for your personal pleasure. I would never deny anyone that. But when it comes to the adult market, you've had your turn. Enjoy your vast fortune and the good you're doing with it. Luxuriate in the love of your legions of fans, and good luck to you on both counts. But it's time to give other writers and other writing room to breathe. I'm not going to say what first comes to mind, particularly because it's not something I'd want to say in public. And when I think about this, on one hand, I can actually understand where she's coming from. I'm an aspiring writer. I have 3 books published. And it has been an uphill battle to try to get people to even pay attention to them. I sometimes make videos about my books. I sometimes do read-alouds of my own stories. And those videos get the fewest views of all. Seems like no one really cares about what I write. It's heartbreaking. It really, really is. For those of you who are interested, check out some of my other books, some of the read-alouds. I know that maybe it's just I trip over the words, or maybe some people intend to read them, but either way, it's really, really annoying when you have stories to write, and I write books a lot, I write stories a lot, and I really want to get other people interested myself. And when you write stories and no one seems to bat an eye, and then you have another person whose writing has sold millions upon millions of copies, and for J.K. Rowling, her net worth was I don't know if it still is, but at one point was said to have been even bigger than the Queen of England. And that's something to be said, and you know that from that point on, anything that she writes with her name on it is going to be literary gold. Maybe not for the fact that it's a good story, but everybody's going to want to read it because it's J.K. Rowling. Now, the reading world is evolving. We have new means for fresh new authors to get their foot in the door much more easily than they did in the years precluding the internet. But yet there's still the traditional means as well, which are just as hard to get your foot in the door with. I've lost count of how many rejection sheets I've gotten. And it can be frustrating, like I said, seeing someone who's gotten their foot in the door and making it so big. And perhaps that those types of writers can crowd out the other aspiring writers. But that's pretty much where my sympathy ends. And I would like to just, and this is shameful because this Lynn Shepherd woman, the one who created this article, is a writer herself. And never have I seen such a vitriolic attack on another writer. A sanctimonious, not even self-absorbed, I can't say that, but it's sanctimonious and just hateful. I never figured authors were capable of butthurt. That's pretty much the only word that comes to mind here. This is butthurt. It's like she's angry at J.K. Rowling for being famous. Her writing is fantastic. I don't know if any of you have ever read the Harry Potter series. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have. For those of you who probably travel in the same circles as me when it comes to my videos, who read the Harry Potter series, or at least some of it, or at least seen the movies. And if you've read the books, then you know just how engrossing they are. When I first read them, I had a friend of mine constantly pressuring me to read the books, and when I finally did, I couldn't put them down. They were just that good. They remember one of my videos where I was reviewing The Shattered Sky, and I said that book pulled me in and made me part of that world to the point where it hurt to leave it. That's how I felt with the Harry Potter books. Every time I finished reading each book, I felt exhilarated and drained at the same time. And that is a mark of a truly great author. And the worst part about this article is that the second paragraph, I've never read a word or seen a minute, so I can't comment on whether the books were good, bad, or indifferent. I did think it a shame that adults were reading them rather than just reading them to their children, which is another thing altogether. She never read the books and was actually ashamed that adults were reading them. Woman, I want to say this to you, if you, on the off chance that you see this video, which I doubt, but hey, it's a big world out there, and anything can happen, law of averages, whatever. If you never even read her stuff, you have no right to be even making this article. That means you don't know a thing about her writing style, her characterization, her use of pacing, any of that, or even why adults like the books just as much as children do. When I started reading those books, I was almost a college graduate, so I was an adult. And if an adult can get into those books just as easily as any child can, then that is a true book for the ages. Another little series that's well known that's like that, The Chronicles of Narnia. They're books that are intended for children, but even adults to this day read it. There are classes where those books are studied by adults. And if memory serves, I believe there are some college courses that actually study the Harry Potter books. You have no right to be making this article. So J.K. Rowling is a goddess among writers currently. Sounds to me like you're just a little bit jealous. She deserves every bit of fame that she's gotten. And yes, the writing market nowadays is kind of unfair, because the alternate means that writers can use to get their names out, they have to work somewhat harder than a writer who's gotten their foot in the door with an actual big publishing company. What I wouldn't give to have one of my books accepted by Bantam Books, Tor, let me see, Del Rey, those types of publishers that, you know, cater to sci-fi and fantasy. That's a dream come true for me. But until that day happens, I've got to work. And there are plenty of us out there with the talent that we can still push our wares. And I most certainly am not jealous of J.K. Rowling. I'm happy for her, especially because those books really deserve the credit that they get. And it is a shame that I've seen other authors out there that have so much talent that they don't get the credit for it. And I'm going to do a little shameless plug. Check out my video, my review of The Shattered Sky. And I hope anyone who reads this will go and buy that book and tell others. Because this guy, Paul Lucas, has that kind of talent. And he's not getting the notoriety he deserves. Hope some of you out there might be interested in some of my books. I most certainly can provide a link down below. As a matter of fact, I will. Shameless plug, yes, I know. But I like other people to check my stuff out. There are other authors out there that are working very, very hard, but I most certainly don't think that we bear other authors any ill will if they are successful in their endeavors. I certainly don't resent people like Octavia Butler, who is like hands down one of my absolute favorite authors. I most certainly bear no ill will against Kay Kenyon or against against people like William Gibson and see what else have I got? Oh, and of course Christopher Paolini. If you've seen my review of the Inheritance series, I give it a glowing report. They all deserve what they got. But there are a lot of authors out there that do not. And I know I'm just spinning my wheels and saying the same thing over and over again, so I'm going to try to wrap this up. This article is just... This leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And Miss Shepherd, once again, on the off chance you maybe listen, you ought to be ashamed of yourself for having written that. For the very reason that you didn't even read J.K. Rowling's books. You're sitting there, yes, this is sour grapes. I say this not as a fanboy. I say this as a fellow writer. That is just reprehensible. You're going on the attack on a well-known writer, a successful writer, because she's successful. Do your own work. Get your writing out there. And don't sit there and begrudge other writers for their fortune and for their success. I spend all my time doing a lot of writing work and encouraging other writers whenever I can. And anyone who's watching this who happens to be a writer, I recommend you do the same. So, once again, that's all I have to say about that. Tell me what you think. I'll make sure to leave a link to the Huffington Post article down below in the doobly-doo. I will make sure to have a link to The Shattered Sky by Paul Lucas, to my video of my Shattered Sky review, and also I will have a link to my Amazon page showing my books. You know, like I said, little shameless plug, but I want others to try to get the word out for really good literature. Maybe one day some of us can actually gain that kind of popularity, that kind of notoriety. But I most certainly do not begrudge Miss Rowling that. So let me know what you think down below. As always, keep it civil. And once again, thank you very much for listening. And so, as always, this is DecKrash, better known as Brandon. And as always, stay lucky and stay blessed. Take care.